Chapter 11. Giving your ideal the impulse of action to make it real. There is one more step in the process of making your ideal complete. It possesses infinite energy, but you must give it the impulse of action. How can you do this? In this I differ from many others. I hold that visualization is not sufficient. Visualization, although it often accomplishes wonders, is after all but a picturing of an idea. It does make the idea vivid, but it adds it only one of several elements, only the images of the sight sense. Instead of visualization, I use idealization, the perfect image. This includes the factor of visualization and that of the 11 other factors. Using the other factors, especially those of motion and direction of motion, we give the ideal an impulse to move, and this in turn gives it the action power that makes the ideal manifest as a reality. Visualizing is the act of holding a mental picture. Idealizing is the act of perfecting the mental image of all factors, the picture, the process of securing it, and the act of making it real. You often ignite the heart of your ideal by vivid mental pictures and strong feelings of desire to possess the reality. But unless connected up with your motor power of action, it remains merely an urgent, unfulfilled picture of desire within you, an ideal that does not become a reality. Clutching your ideal to action cannot be effectively accomplished by a picture. Let me illustrate this clearly. Go to an art museum. Look at any picture representing a number of people. If, after going away, you close your eyes and visualize the painting, you hold it in your mind a mental picture of the painting. With care and practice, you can make this mental picture very vivid and increase your ability to re-see in the mind every detail of such a painting, lines, forms, and colors of things and people. Yet it is still a mere picture. It is flat, lacking action, and it does not impel to action. That which I have described is the visualizing process. Visualizing has produced marvelous results when the person visualizing has turned such mental picture-making into the idealized process, even if they have not recognized that they have done so. Idealizing, however, is more remarkable because it includes visualizing and adds all the other elements to it. Visualization comes from using the stored-up images of but one of your senses, the sense of sight. Idealization comes from using the stored-up images not only of the sense of sight, but of all other senses. To attain that which we desire, it is necessary, not only to see the visual image, but to act. Try now another process. Idealize the painting you saw in the art museum. Bring it visually to your mind. Re-see it just as you did by the process previously described. Then imagine action. Every person in it in action. Feel them doing the thing they were pictured as doing. Feel the movement. Feel the activity. If it portrays them as speaking, hear the tones. Hear what they say. I might continue with all other elements of the picture, but I think this is sufficient to show you the difference between visualization and idealization. Visualization produces a non-moving, non-active picture in the mind, even though it be vivid and clear. Being non-active, it does not impel to action, and hence many of our pictured ideals do not become realities. But if we idealize action, if we use the mental clutch of connecting up the ideal of the thing desired with the process of attaining that which we desire, action must result. And action is one of the essential factors in making any ideal come true. Chapter 12. The process that makes ideals come true. Process is the way of doing things. There are several ways of doing things, but the idealized way is the only way that guarantees success. The non-idealized processes are mere doing, purposeful doing, planned or thought-out doing. The fourth process is the idealized process. Mere doing never lends to success. For back of it there is no ideal of the process, no desire to improve it, no thought-out plan, and no ideal. In mines and stores and factories and offices there are millions of good workers. They learn to do one thing. They learn to do it well, and then forever afterwards they merely do. They drudge, toil, or labor, but they do not work, and they do not succeed. You yourself may do your work perfectly, merely doing it. You may be always at it. Others may be able to depend upon you doing your work exactly, with no loss of time, not missing a stroke. But all these do not lead to attainment. Why, even a hay press does these things. Purposeful doing is one step in advance of mere doing. It is based upon an idea of progress and is stimulated by a desire. But that is not sufficient. Why? The bank robber has a purpose in robbing. He may succeed now and then in getting what he wants, and he always succeeds in making himself a useless member of society. Yet his life is not successful, and he is not a success. Even well-planned, carefully thought-out doing leads to thousands of failures. Many a young man, intelligent, enthusiastic, hard-working, and earnest, starts in business for himself and fails, even after he has planned and thought out his entire problem. When he begins, he sees success, big success, within 2-3 years at most, but in 6 months the sheriff may close him up as a failure. Even planned doing, based upon ideas, desires, and thought-out processes, fails unless the process is idealized. It is only an idealized aim, process, and attitude that always wins. Some time ago, an additional main subway was opened in New York City. It necessitated a new routing of passengers. More than 7 million people had to learn to travel by new routes. For days before the opening, the papers were full of the new system and how to get from one point to another. At least 9 out of every 10 of the millions of adults in New York must have read the directions previous to the opening, although probably not 1 in 100,000, when they read the directions over and over again, idealized the new route or idealized themselves going about the city or to and from work on it. The result of not idealizing the process on the day of the opening, intelligent men and women crowded and jammed each other, went where they did not wish to go, even got lost, though many of them had known New York all their lives. The confusion and jamming of the mob at transfer stations were so great that scores of women fainted, and many were seriously hurt. More than 1 million people lost their heads, more than 1 million were confused for weeks. It was necessary to close the crosstown subway for a month to prevent accidents, actually to prevent people killing themselves and each other because of their confused mob action. And all of this confusion, trouble, injury, and delay could have been prevented if each of the 7 million people who used the subway had spent but 5 minutes previous to its opening in idealizing the process of traveling on it. How I idealized the process in this case? I took a description of the routes from the newspaper, read it carefully, then I quietly visualized the new routes. Next, I idealized action. Idealized myself using the new route from my home to my office, picturing myself on the cars, changing where the description said changes must be made, idealizing every bit of the journey to my office door. Next, I idealized one trip after another to other parts of the city, until I had myself mentally used every new and old route. After this, it was impossible to be confused, impossible to make a mistake in using the subway. Millions of others thought of the new routes, but certainly very few consciously idealized themselves traveling on them. Yet every individual in New York could have done it in 5 minutes if they had only been in the habit of idealizing the process of doing things. Others had ideas of the new route, of where they wanted to go and how to get there. I turned my idea into ideals. Idealizing the process of doing the thing included more than the re-seeing of the mental picture of the new route. I did more than visualize it. I put into it an element of action. I kept my clutch in so that the picture became movement. That is always essential in attaining that which you desire. Chapter 13. The act of making the reality yours. This last activity, the act of making the reality yours, comprises 3 steps. Idealizing your attitude, unifying the substance of the ideal with the substance of the real, and making the actual thing a part of your possessions or placing yourself in the actual condition that you have idealized and desired. Your attitude relates to yourself, to others, to conditions, and to the world in general. Begin with yourself. Consciously or not, you do not take some kind of an attitude toward yourself. You may think yourself a worm or a god. You are free to take any attitude toward yourself you desire to take. But there is only one attitude that leads to success, and it is the idealized attitude. Incomplete thinking in ideas makes you see yourself as a child of sin, suffering, sorrow, weakness, mistake, and failure. Think of yourself as you are, a son of God, idealizing the end you desire, the process by which you attain, and the attitude you hold toward yourself, others, conditions, and the universe itself. Then, idealize your attitude toward others. That which ye seek ye shall find. If you think that all men are trying to crush you, you will be crushed. First, because your attitude closes your eyes to the opportunity offered you, and second, because such an attitude discovers and draws to you those who do not help you. If you idealize others as willing to help you, you draw to you men and women who will do the square thing by you and help you. In them you will find help and a just reward. This idealized attitude does not make you a trusting simpleton, for the idealized attitude also idealizes wisdom in knowing others. The idealized attitude changes all the conditions of life. In business, it leads us to expect good results, and expecting good results, we plan better. And when we plan better, that is, in a more idealized way, we get better results. Idealize the world in general. The universe must be good. If it were not good, it would go to pieces overnight. For evil disrupts and destroys. Good attracts and unites and holds together. You cannot idealize your business, your profession, and your work without conducting the whole affair as an idealized service that inevitably will force your ideals to come true. You may idealize the thing desired, idealize the process of attaining it, and carry out the process in action, and yet, by your attitude, keep the reality from becoming yours. With a group of congenial friends, you can desire and idealize an evening's pleasure for yourself and the girl you love. You may call for her and go to a gathering together, and yet your attitude, if disagreeable, can keep the pleasure of the evening from becoming yours. First, then, give attention to your attitude. Second, unify the substance of your ideal with the substance of the thing or condition desired. The substance of your ideal is yours. It is your mind. The substance of the reality may not yet be yours. To make it yours, you must make the body of your ideal coincide with the body or actuality of that which you desire. Reread the chapters on how to form an ideal that will come true, firing the heart desire of your ideal, giving a body and etheric substance to your ideal, and giving your ideal the impulse of action to make it real. Then reimagine your ideal in accord with those four qualities, its form, its desire, its substance, its impulse to action. Next, reread the 3 chapters of The Spirit of Matter, your ideals and what compactness of matter gives to them, your desires and what attractive energy gives to them, what movement in matter gives to the body of your desire, and do not neglect to reread these. You remember much, but not all things. Reread them, recognizing that the material density of the thing you desire is an etheric substance coinciding in nature with the substance of your ideal. That the material solidity of the thing you desire is infinite attractive energy, which coincides in nature with the holding together energy of your ideal, and that the energy of the material thing desired is etheric force, exactly the same force as exists in your ideal. Now imagine each detail of your ideal projected out of your mind to the place of the actuality, and unite it with the same detail of the material actuality you desire to be yours. Do not miss a single detail. Make the projected ideal coincide with the actual thing in every feature, form, substance, energy, and place. To miss no factor, unify step by step as to color, sound, taste, smell, balance, heat, movement, direction of movement, form, size, fineness or roughness, hardness or softness, cold, weight, use, pleasure for use, etc., etc. Miss none of these. Then, third, take the possession of the thing or walk into the condition desired. Idealize yourself in action. The condition of yourself when in action, your use of the means to be used in performing your action. If this afternoon you are to go to one man or group of men to discuss or do something which is necessary for you to present or to do in order to make your ideal come true, Imagine yourself with the man or with the men. Imagine yourself at perfect ease. Imagine your confidence in yourself. Imagine your self-control when talking to them, when contradicted by them, even when ridiculed by one or more of them. Imagine these conditions in your mind before you go. It builds in brain a path that makes the doing of the thing but a mere repetition of the thing already done. I say imagine these things. Not merely imagine them. Merely thinking about them will not bring results. Imagine also the impressions you see yourself giving to others. Are you appearing as sincere as you are sincere? Are you appearing as reliable as you are reliable? Are you appearing active and energetic and sane and safe? Remember, it is not only what you are, but what you communicate to others which determines results in dealing with others. Idealizing the action builds in brain paths. Then, when you come to the actual doing, you have already established a habit of doing it successfully. The more times you idealize the doing, the stronger and more permanent these brain paths have become. Hence, when you go into action, you are merely repeating what you have already done and what you have already succeeded in doing. Consequently, there is no hesitancy, no doubt, no lack of confidence, no lack of ease, and no mistakes in your action. And because you center your effort rightly, the thing or condition is a reality and belongs to you. Where to center your effort now follows. Chapter 14. Where to center your effort. It is very important that you idealize that which you desire. But so far as an attainment of it is concerned, the process is much more important. And idealizing the process is the most important at all. I will illustrate. 1. By a little incident, and 2. By a great world experience. In the spring of 1919, some time after I had returned to the United States from one of my sojourns abroad, I wrote a letter to Elizabeth Towne. I had known her for many years, but while I was living abroad we had been quite out of touch. When Mrs. Towne received my letter, it awakened a desire in her mind. There was to be a convention near her hometown the following week. She wished me to speak at the convention. To have me speak at the convention was her ideal of the thing desired. Did she stop with the ideal of the thing desired? No, not at all. She began idealizing the process of getting me there. She pressed the bell button immediately. It became a stenographer, and a letter was sent telling me how I could come and return, giving information on the trains, how by traveling at night the trip would take the least possible time. At intervals during the day and next she went on idealizing the process of arranging for me while there, where I should stay, when I should speak, how many times I should speak, etc., etc. She gave 10 seconds to recognizing the ideal of the thing desired, and an hour or more idealizing the process. 10 seconds to the former, 3,600 seconds to the latter. That's about the right proportion. Think this over. It applies to everything in life. Give about 1,000 times more time and effort to idealizing and working out the process than you give to idealizing the thing you desire, and your ideal will come true. Turn from this very simple incident to consider the value of idealizing the process in attaining great things, in a very great thing, in such a matter as a world war. The Great World War was a great spiritual test of the race. When the Germans in 1914 were at the Marne, the ideal of the thing desired was, the German army must be stopped. This was not a mere idea. It was a life and death ideal of the peoples of the Allied countries. Great leaders recognized this. When news that the German army was being forced back was ticked off in the London War Office, Lord Kitchener said, "God must have done it." And Lord Roberts said, "It means the nations have been praying." The following year, during another crisis, Lloyd George exclaimed, "The war will be lost unless all England gets down on her knees in prayer." And in 1918, the great foe found daily communion necessary. This was the emphasis of the ideal. But the process was not neglected. Even he who daily spent an hour in prayer and daily went to Holy Communion knew that God helps only those who know enough to help themselves. Our one national war ideal was win. Having once recognized this, did we waste time harping upon it? No. And we succeeded because we centered most of our efforts upon the process necessary to win the war. When it was necessary to save food, we saved it. We went without this or that, without meat on meatless days, without wheat on wheatless days. But we did more than accept the process. We idealized it. We made it a matter of patriotism, a religion of brotherly help to our allies who needed food. When we needed money, did we continue harping on the ideal? No, not at all. We idealized the process of furnishing the means to equip and feed our boys. We idealized the process to such an extent that he who did not buy all he could afford and did a little more felt wrong inside. When more ships were needed, college boys and highly paid businessmen did manual work in the shipyards. And when more munitions were needed, women whose white hands had never before known the feel of grease of factory machines worked long hours because the process was idealized. What was new in this? We had always held ideals and been forced to take part in the process of life in peace times. The new thing, the thing that brought phenomenal result, was the idealization of the process. No work was drudgery. It was an idealized part of the effort of the great human brotherhood. Suppose we had neglected the process. Suppose we had made no munitions, built no ships, sold no bonds, sent no men overseas. Would such a procedure have helped to win the war? Such a process would have been ridiculous. Yet in other matters, we attempt to make our ideals and desires come true by holding persistently, day after day, month after month, to the ideal of the thing desired, giving little or no attention to idealizing the process and putting it into operation. If you want to win, if you really wish that which you desire, if you truly desire to make your ideals come true, to turn them into realities, first form your ideal of the thing desired, but give your great effort to idealizing the process and putting it into action. That brings you the reality. Chapter 15. Idealized things make fortunes. In whatever you are doing, and whatever you hope to do and attain, it is necessary to deal with three factors: things, words, and people. In fact, when you come to think of it, there is nothing else with which you can deal. Consequently, idealizing the process of attaining that you want includes idealizing the things with which you work or the things you are to handle. And often great fortunes are made from idealizing little things, and great failures result from non-idealization of things, big or little. Here are the experience of two men illustrating the point. It was on the train speeding across the state of New York toward Chicago. I had left the dining car, gone to the club car, and observing that the seats about one of the card tables were empty, sat down there so that I might be alone to read. Men were coming in from dinner, and soon a man took a seat across the table. I looked up to determine whether others were there with him, and if so, whether they might not wish the table for card playing. But he was alone. He had a fine face, clean, clear-cut, evidently a man of education, perhaps a man of culture. His face, his bearing, his attitude all proclaimed him to be a man of ideals. I do not mean a visionary, but a man who does and who has always done that which is right, and who refuses and has refused to do that which is wrong. In a minute we were in conversation. It started regarding the high cost of living. It went from one thing to another. He was communicative, and it was not long before he mentioned that he had wished this year to send his boy to college, but he was unable to do so because he could not afford it. College education costs 4 times as much today as it did when I went to college, he said. The first point I wish you to remember is this. He could not afford to send his son to college. I led him on in the conversation, learned that after graduating from college he had been a school teacher, that later he had been in YMCA work, a welfare worker in a manufacturing plant for a year, and that in 1913 he, with a friend, had gone into a manufacturing business of his own. Well, what line of manufacturing? I asked. Oh, just little wicker hand satchels, such as boys used to carry their books to and from school, he answered. This is the second point I wish you to remember. Oh, just little wicker hand satchels. This conversation took place in the year 1920. It indicates that after having been in business 7 years, manufacturing an article of use to at least 10 million school children as well as hundreds of thousands of others in our country, this man of ideals was unable to send his boy to college because he could not afford it. We talked of other things, but before long he left me, going back to his private car. 2 other men came in and sat down, one across the table, one beside me. Later I learned that one was a coal operator of Indiana and the other, well, the rest of the story concerns the other man. One look at this man told me he was not a so-called man of ideals, that is, not in accord with the ordinary use of the term. He looked very prosperous. He was talkative. Men are always more communicative after dinner, smoking a good cigar on a train with nothing else to do. This man is the soap dye king of the world. Only a few years ago, he and a friend, his wife and a friend's wife, started in business making soap dyes. Although they had $800, today each of them is more than a millionaire. Their soap dyes sell for 10 cents a package, yet they do a business of many $100,000 a month. They secured the original patent, and consequently, in addition to the profits they make from their own concern, they are paid royalties by all other soap dye companies. How did he do it? I have said that he is not a man of ideals. That statement is both true and not true. He is not a man of ideals of the Pharisee kind, but he is the kind of man who idealizes the thing of which he works. To him, the soap dye is one of the great inventions of the age. His face glowed as he talked about it. His eyes shone. Think what it means, he said, for every woman in the land, in fact, all over the world, for now we're selling soap dyes to Europe, Australia, India, and Japan, to be able in 2 minutes to change the color of her shirtwaist, of a piece of lace, or any light trimming merely by dipping it in our dye, without any boiling, without staining their hands. From the very beginning he had idealized the thing he produced. He had idealized the soap in order to select the best for his purpose. He had idealized the dye so as to produce the most useful dye, the most easily and quickly used dye, a dye needing no boiling, a dye that does not stain the hands of those using it. He had idealized the chemicals used in the process of making the dye, and as he talked of how he had built up the business, I saw that he had even idealized the kind of chemical expert he wanted, and had then searched the United States until he found the man that fitted his ideal. He had idealized justice and had secured patent rights for himself and those who had worked for him. His process of idealizing the thing, the soap dye, did not stop when he had put a good product on the market and when the product had earned him millions of dollars. He told me how that very afternoon he had spent 3 hours with the Japanese girls in New York to prove his soap dyes would not stain the hands of the Japanese women. He had done this because reports had come from Japan that the dyes did stain the hands of Japanese girls. He began his work by idealizing the thing he intended to manufacture. He had idealized the thing every day since he first conceived of it, and he is still idealizing the same thing. Is it any wonder that his face glows, with his eyes shine, and his tone is enthusiastic, and that he's making millions? He is not a so-called man of ideals, but he puts idealizing into action. He idealizes everything, every common labor. He is actually happy telling me that he and his wife made the first dyes in their own home in stew pots and dish pans, and that, while he was making the boxes in which to ship the dyes, his wife was out peddling them. He has idealized the service the dye renders to millions of women, and the just rewards to himself. Consequently, he is successful. He is worth millions. Made in less than 4 years, he is able to send his 2 boys to college. There are Pharisees today as there were in Christ's time. What value are your ideals unless you use them? The great Master has said that unless we use the talents we have, even that which we have shall be taken away. It is not holding ideals that make desires come true. It is using ideals. The first step is to idealize the thing with which you are working.